Hi everyone, welcome to the Lawcast. My name's Melanie Thorley from MJT Law and this is Christy Santana.
How are we going?
And we're in the same place.
For the first time in 2022. It's been 4 months since we've been back in the office. I think November we sort of
it was kind of
somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was around early December maybe.
Yeah, so it's been a long time.
It has been a long time.
For everyone there, me and Melanie had to set up the podcast and it's taken challenges since we forgotten.
We are dum-dums.
Yes.
We will do better next time. So if the lighting is all wrong or we're all looking at like you've chopped our heads off,
put it down to experience.
This is
just
all
lack thereof.
Lack thereof.
But we're finally back.
We are.
And I'm liking it.
Yes, I like being in the office. It's a nice space here as well.
Yes, and I'm sure a lot of employees are out there thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah.
As I think in most states, they're pretty much probably Western Australia excluded.
Maybe Western Australia. Yeah, I think everyone's back to normal. I have to say though, I ride my bike in, and I'm suffering.
Right, the pain's 3 months out, and
I haven't. And for those of you who don't know, I actually broke a number of bones in my body.
yeah, it wasn't just the working from home that did it.
No, I broke a pile of bones, which meant I was out of action for at least 8 weeks, and so I'm suffering.
Did you film it?
Did I film my accident?
Yeah.
I did not. Although now that I think about it. Yeah, I don't have any footage of it. It would have been horrendous though, because what had happened, for those who are watching and listening, is I had eBay, which is my older dog, in the backpack, and I had Seymour, which is the puppy, in this front carrier. And at the time I had the front carrier basically attached to the part of my bike that turns. So in my wisdom, I changed harnesses and it was a little looser, and Seymour was able to kind of partially jump out, so I grabbed him and the bike turned and went straight into my ribs, which was how I broke my ribs. And by catching the dog, my arm hit the ground.
Yep.
Which is how I broke my elbow.
Yep.
And because I had one hand here and one hand here, I had nothing stopping me from hitting the ground.
Yeah.
So I had eBay on my back, slamming my face into the ground, which is how I broke my nose.
Right.
But
where's the bike in all of this? It's just like flung off?
No, it's just on the ground next to me. The bike was fine, by the way.
Oh, really?
The dogs were fine. Like, there was not even a scratch.
The safety bag, essentially.
When I went to the doctor said there are an awful lot of injuries with people not stepping on their dog, or falling down the stairs, tripping over the dog, or they're carrying a kid and they fall over and they've saved the kid and somehow really damaged themselves. And
I suppose you shows your priorities,
Yeah, really amazing.
But we are now back.
We are back.
Running. But in this week, I've sort of decided we're going to do a continuation of a theme. Maybe we should start a bit of a segment.
Is this about galah?
It's in the same
crackers?
segment. So we first had crackers, the galah. We had the unfair dismissal for sending 76 text messages in the space
I really liked that
of 5 hours, which I think we worked out to basically mean they're on their phone
constantly, every 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, taking into account how long it takes to read and text.
I really like that one because the person actually filed an unfair dismissal, took it all the way through to a hearing, and then the commission said, no, you can't do that.
So in the continuation of what I'm calling Chris's Commission's Crazies,
yes,
the CCC.
Oh, I like that.
We have the case of Singh and I believe it's Vincent's Logistics Proprietary Limited.
Okay.
Out of time application.
Out of time application.
1 day out of time.
Ooh.
And he was successful.
Okay.
Which for everyone out there is fairly rare. It's not unheard of, but it's rare. It's it's harder than not. So what had happened was he goes to his boss. So no, sorry, I'll go back a step. He had been working for the organisation for quite some time, for the owner being an older gentleman.
Okay, here we go.
The son comes involved and becomes essentially his boss.
Right.
Like, at least on a day-to-day level. They don't get along.
Right, okay.
They really, really don't get along. I suspect it may have been kind of a change management kind of issue.
Okay. This is actually often quite the case, though, for those who are watching and listening. When there is a change of guard, there's often an awful lot of conflict, and that change of guard could be dad letting son take over the business. It could be a new CEO.
Yep.
It could be just a new manager who's got new ideas. It could just be someone horrendous who comes in, decides he's going to fire everyone and employ the people they like.
Yep.
But it is really common.
So they've had this kind of transition. They're not getting along. The employee goes to, I'm just going to call it the son. Goes to the son and says,
Goes to Junior. Yeah.
Employer Junior, and goes, I'm resigning.
Took enough. I'm out.
I've had enough. It didn't appear to have any animosity in the way.
Right, he didn't go, screw you.
Yeah, it wasn't the big two-finger salute, throwing books around type of resignation. But he says, I'll do my 4 weeks' notice.
Oh, I'll work it out.
The son loses it.
Oh, I like it.
Really, really loses it.
Of course he does.
What he decides to do is punch the employee, pushes him to the ground, gets better, pushes him to the ground, proceeds to run to the door, and I can only assume this is an internal room of some description, proceeds to lock the door, essentially imprisoning the employee.
Oh, yeah?
And says to him, you're not allowed out until the police come.
Okay.
Because he was of the view that the resignation was unlawful, such that the police would become involved. He did call the police, and they did attend. I suspect it was not at all because
he was resigning.
The resignation. I suspect it was the imprisonment. And they eventually come and the guy's allowed out. And the employee then goes to the dad. So it kind of goes above his assaulters, his prisoners.
Goes to work as senior.
Yep. And he says, hey, pretty how you going type of arrangement that happened. But nevertheless, as long as you pay my annual leave and my entitlements,
I'll walk away from this dude.
Does that for a few days. Doesn't really go anywhere, and he misses his 21 days.
Right. Okay.
And it's an interesting case, not only because, the way in which it was
so
fired,
inflammatory.
it was really, really poor. In fact, I believe a crime happened.
Is it? Okay, I'll let you keep going. But I'm just wondering if it is an unfair dismissal if he's resigned.
Well, I suppose they haven't considered it yet.
They must turn their mind to the quality of the case, though, because that's part of the criteria for determining an out-of-time application. Prospects is what they call it, which is basically, does this person even have a case? So they do. So I'll let you go because this is fascinating.
So he was found to be successful, and when you think about because it's a valid reason for the delay. Now, I'm not thinking about anything about the termination.
This is because of the course of the negotiations?
No, so in part yes, but that kind of came out to be a neutral consideration in the end, because he was negotiating entitlements, not the dismissal itself. Nevertheless, it was a neutral consideration.
Yeah.
But the valid reason for the delay was found because of, one, how unique the dismissal was.
The punching in the face and the and the what is it? Being
imprisoned.
Yeah. Being
yeah.
Lack of liberty there. Yeah. Freedom. Sorry, being denied freedom.
Denied freedom. So the commissioner drew a very interesting kind of contrast, because essentially the argument was the imprisonment caused the guy so much humiliation, so much distress, hence the delay.
I think he got lucky.
Drew an interesting contrast that it wasn't, because we know distress because of a dismissal is not a valid reason for a delay, because the threshold is being an exceptional circumstance.
Yeah, everyone's upset about being fired.
Everyone's upset.
Yeah.
So if they allowed that, everyone would be allowed to do it over 21 days.
Yeah.
But this was not distress caused by the dismissal as in the ending of employment.
Yeah.
It was the fact that he was essentially imprisoned and assaulted.
It's crazy.
And so that was a positive consideration for the allowing of the out-of-time application. It would have been interesting to go into the merit, because it should be said that this was unchallenged. The employer chose not to give any, didn't attend.
Oh, right. There was no...
There's no contrary evidence. There was so no witness statements in reply, and they didn't attend the hearing itself.
Wow.
So completely unchallenged. So it should also be said that, you know, that incident that may have happened may have actually happened something slightly different to what was said, as in how unprovoked it was, etc. But nevertheless, they were satisfied that assault had happened.
Yeah, I get all that, but I want to... I like the triple C's that you bring out.
It's Chris's commission crazies.
That's right. I do like it. I do like it a lot. I'm sure if we go back in time, we'll be able to see quite a few of them to do with the global event.
Yeah, the global event. The global event.
But so I'm just interested in this concept, because we know that unfair dismissal has a criteria, and most of it's around valid reason for dismissal and so on. And there is a section that talks about forced resignation, but it was none of those.
It's interesting because one of the requirements for an unfair dismissal is in the name, to be dismissed.
Yes.
And it's interesting, you're right. If they had have maybe agitated it...
Even a little bit.
A little bit. Whether that be in a jurisdictional objection or not. I mean, he resigned prior to the assault happening.
Yeah. Would it be? I mean, he's filed an unfair dismissal. It's got over the line. I'm going to assume it's going to run through. The parties aren't going to come to any type of resolution.
No.
So we may, in about 8 months' time, see a decision come out which is about this. So we'll check out
hold our hats for it.
We'll check out the triple C then. But I wonder if it's a general protections. Because is it a workplace right to resign?
I believe so, yeah.
So is it okay to be adversely treated because, I mean, being hit?
Being hit
is adverse treatment, right?
And I mean, his loss is 4 weeks' pay.
That's true. So setting aside pain and suffering, Chris, and the contraventions.
Yeah, that's true. And
penalties attached to that.
I mean,
the economic loss might be limited. But I wonder if it sits better as a general protections.
Probably.
Because, you know, the guy's still there. He's handed in his notice, but he's working it out. So he's still an employee. We've had questions before that have come up where someone is resigned, they've gone, and then they're adversely treated. And we've stopped and had to think about whether that fits in. And I don't think it does, although there might be someone else out there who has an alternative opinion to that, and quite happily, send it our way. But I wonder if it's adverse treatment.
I think it is. I think it fits far better in the...
And for what purpose? I mean, the guy's resigned. He's not staying.
Well...
Why hit him?
Do you think there is a missing piece in this? I mean, bear in mind, unchallenged evidence.
There's got to be something going on here. No one just flips their lid and hits somebody for no reason. I mean, the guy could have been unhinged, I guess. But, geez... Yeah, locking the door, depriving of liberty, it's pretty funny.
Yeah,
I like it.
I mean, the interesting kind of practical things is if they didn't get along, I thought he'd be sort of half happy the guy was...
half happy?
Resigning, kind of issue goes away. But, but it absolutely, really interesting case. I'm not sure it would have been successful had they been challenged.
I think
had there been...
have to bring up the question of whether, in fact, it was an unfair dismissal, whether it even fits in that criteria. I mean, amazing. I like it, but I still think it works better in the general protection space.
But one of the kind of interesting things about it is it goes to the unpredictability.
Hello, eBay.
Of out-of-time applications. Out of all the sort of different areas and common kind of cases we see come across our doors, across our tables, is out-of-time applications seem to be one of the most unpredictable.
Yeah.
Things, certain cases where they seem to get fairly lenient, and then others that are extremely harsh. Like the one that comes to mind, there was a case where a lady had, within the space of the 21 days, she had spent about 6 days after, just, nothing had happened.
Yeah.
I'm sure she was distressed or anything,
In
but
shock.
nothing crazy.
Yeah.
Then her dad dies.
Okay.
Apparently she was quite close to her father. And then she also goes into a coma.
Of course.
During the 21 days.
Yeah.
And then proceeds to be in a coma for some time after the 21 days, awakes from it, and from memory, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, but from memory she files her application quite soon after the coma, which is just an interesting kind of thing that would be on the forefront of your mind after all of that.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, they did that. And she wasn't allowed. And the point was that she had those
8 days.
Those 8 days, those first days to do it. And, the rest is a bit of a write-off. But it didn't excuse those 8 days for which she...
This is the same sort of thing where there've been applications when someone's gone on holiday and had accidents and been in hospital, or they got caught up in the Indonesian tsunami.
Yeah, all sorts of cases.
And still not over the line because they could have filed before it happened.
Because it's although they may have had a valid reason for a period of it, and in this case it would have been, the other days other than the 8. Sure, father dying and the and the
13
coma,
other days or whatever it is.
the coma are certainly exceptional circumstances, but they didn't explain the entire 21 days.
Did not explain the entire, and this is the tricky thing when we talk to clients about out-of-time applications. We know we need to justify every day it's late.
And it's difficult.
And the why. And it is really, really hard. Really, really, really hard. For those who don't know out there, 21 days, it's from the last day of work. So whether you're in negotiations with your employer during that time or whatever's going on, the Commission are not very sympathetic.
And one of the reasons, I suppose, the public policy reasons behind it is 21 days is certainly short, but employers ought to be given the opportunity to essentially move on and make business decisions post-employment. Especially in circumstances where it's not very difficult to file. It's not a massive thing, and there isn't any requirements as to what the quality of the application needs to be. It can be rubbish.
There's absolutely no qualification.
So there's nothing stopping you from doing something really last minute and just getting it over the line. You can always provide more details.
Something really rubbish in.
You actually don't even put any words in it.
You can put something super rubbish just to put a placeholder and get it over the line.
Particularize later. You can even call.
That's true, and get it done over the telephone.
Which is one of the common ones you see all the time is, I don't have an internet.
That's true.
For example, I saw one last week about the Queensland floods, saying that they were out of time because of the floods, and the Commission rightfully said, you still had a phone.
Still had a phone.
You still could have called.
Yeah, it's harsh, but true. When the Fair Work Act first came out, unfair dismissals had a 2-week time frame.
Right.
14 days.
14 days.
And from memory, General Protections, I can't remember whether it was 6 or 3 months, but they had a massive time frame. And then there was a little bit of an argy-bargy going on, and it just got cut back for both to 21.
Can I guess that they would have seen an awful lot of General Protections claims that felt a lot like unfair dismissals?
Probably.
Because quite often they overlap. But if you're out of time, you're probably better off trying to frame an unfair dismissal to look a bit more like a General Protections.
Well, it's really interesting because I often tell people that almost every General Protections matter, which is General Protections, for those who don't know, it's when you're adversely treated for exercising a workplace right or making a complaint or inquiry about the job. Oh, I'm sorry, are you tired? So normally it's okay for an employee to make a complaint about stuff in relation to their job without the fear that they're going to be treated badly because of it, i.e. being punched in the face.
Yeah, because you resigned.
Because you're resigned. Or, being made fearful for your job for asking about your pay. There's a few things out there. But almost always, if it's a termination, you can frame the general protections as an unfair dismissal.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Almost like
all general protections are unfair dismissals.
but not all unfair dismissals are general
protections.
Because
That's right.
you have to think if one of the criteria for an unfair dismissal is that there was essentially no valid reason, you can't imagine any breach of general protections is ever going to also be a valid reason.
Yeah, it's it's a really
not a valid
interesting
reason
one, isn't it?
to fire someone because they want to take sick leave, for example.
The thing is, though, guys, you are what we call statutory barred from filing both at the same time. You must choose. The Act doesn't allow you to file both applications and have them both running. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting.
And I, in fear of poo-pooing the system a bit too much, I find it a little bit harsh, given how many unrepresented
How hard it is to get it right.
determine the difference. General protections are quite, they're quite tricky.
To be fair, you can't have it both ways, Mr. D. Santana. We complain that there are too many applications to begin with because there's no gatekeeper. Allowing people to do two at the same time is just going to double the trouble, surely.
That is true. There's no real right or wrong answer here. And I suppose in many respects it's not that different to many different parts of law. Law is tricky.
Law is tricky. And
I'm not sure. They already provide so much support and so much help for applicants out there. How much more can really be done?
I'm going to segue into something else, which is not a very good segue, so I will practice that, everyone. There are changes to the superannuation coming up.
Very big. I actually think a very big change.
Huge changes.
Rather not publicised in the scheme of things.
I kind of didn't. I wasn't really watching this. I mean, I know that I work in employment law and I should be watching everything. But the trouble is, people, there is so much going on out there all the time.
Yeah.
I get the alerts when a bill comes out and that happens, and I kind of keep an eye on it. But sometimes these bills will last 7 or 8 years. They'll go through 2 different terms of political parties, and you just wonder what's going on.
And then before you know it, you just get a ping, and
it's happened.
2 months' time, it's changing.
Yeah, and this one is about the threshold. So anybody out there who is essentially a low-income worker who would normally have qualified for superannuation, but for the fact they earn less than $450 in a month, will now qualify for superannuation.
Yeah. So they will, pending their contract, essentially be earning 10% more than they were
That's true. Yes,
yesterday.
It's huge. It's all these 18-year-olds out there who are working only a couple of hours every week, not earning very much money at all, and all of a sudden, they're going to get to contribute to the super funds. I can see this becoming a massive problem for employers. I don't know. There must be an awful lot of employers out there who have a lot of transient staff, and and they wouldn't have stayed for $450, but all of a sudden you're going to end up having to take details or at least put it in a holding fund, because if you don't provide a superannuation account, your employer is legally obliged to basically open one for you and start stuffing money into it. So anybody out there who's thought that they may have worked and got paid and didn't get super, it's probably in some rando fund.
Well, this is one of the biggest issues and the inefficiencies is people having multiple different accounts and all the different fees and admin and interest problems that come with that. But do they still, as far as you're aware, have the age threshold?
There are lots.
That might kind of cover most people.
There's a fair amount of thresholds there. There is an age threshold. There's also there's a bunch of them about overseas workers and stuff like that. There's a pile of thresholds there, but the one, for example, I had a admin assistant who used to work like 4 hours a week, and she never earned $450 a month. So we never paid super. Now she would be qualified to get super.
And the reasons behind this, do you think? Why now? And why did we have it in the first place?
Well, I think the $450 in the first place is because the admin to do with super is actually quite extensive. There's a lot going on there for an employer to pay it, and there's a lot of stuff they have to take into consideration. So I think
$45 a month.
For $45 a month. So I think that's the reason why they dropped it. I'm wondering if the reason why it finally got through is because people pulled their super during COVID.
Yeah, I think so.
For those overseas,
that came to my mind.
Yeah, for those overseas viewers, superannuation is like the pension. It It is a fund that is, if you earn $1,000 a week, you also, and that's minimum wage, you also earn 10% of that goes into a superannuation fund that you cannot get access to until you are retired. There are exceptions, but this is easier. So, by the time you retire, you might have 1.5 mil, whatever amount of money in that super fund, and it's meant to be there to support you during the time you are not dead, but also not working.
Yeah.
And it's compulsory here in Australia. There are not many countries that have compulsory superannuation payments, but certainly Australia is one of them. And it's about to change.
Yeah, and in more ways than one, we know that they haven't frozen the increases just yet.
No, they haven't.
My bet was still on 10.5, so we'll do another jump.
This year we'll do another jump.
But I suspect it'll be frozen at that. But my guess was actually pre-COVID.
I
remember this would have been sort of like this November, December prior to COVID, and that was my guess. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I think it might not get frozen, because they need to recover that.
They do.
That money, and they need to recover it faster rather than slower. And that might mean increases. But I mean, we've spoken about this before. I'm not a massive fan of super, just as a kind of a personal
It's a lock-up for you, because you're not going to be using it for a good 50-odd years.
I trust myself with the money more than I trust the superannuation.
Well, there is a few superannuation companies out there who people were quite saddened back in the GFC that they just lost all their money. So I can see why that could be a problem.
But I get it from a public policy reason.
Yeah.
On the most part, it'll be handled fairly sensibly, and they might get a moderate return, such that the government doesn't have to pay for its pension come.
Well, there isn't. Yeah, everyone worries about this, doesn't it? So what's happening here in Australia is about 10 years ago, I'm going to spitball here, there was this kind of concept where super was at, I think it was like 9% or 8.75% or something of your annual salary, and they wanted to get it up to 12. So they had this grand idea to up it 0.5% every year until it got to 12. But it got to 9.5%, and it froze for about 7 years.
Yep.
And that went through 2 political terms, and then it got unfrozen. I believe it got unfrozen because of COVID, essentially.
Yeah.
And we don't know yet. It's not going to be frozen again because the budget hasn't been released, and we're assuming the budget's going to be released before we have to vote in May, I think it is.
Let's say, yeah, I'd imagine
around April.
You want a federal election budget because you can cash flash.
You can do some stuff with it. So yeah, we're all, excuse me everyone, we're all waiting to see what's going to happen with super. So there's 2 really huge things that are happening with people's super right now.
That's money. Well, I know it's not quite money in pocket.
Well, it might not be, because this is the thing about the last time. Is your salary based on it's 60 grand including super, or is it 60 grand plus super?
So for many people, you're actually losing money out of your everyday.
You're actually going to have a pay cut, not a pay rise.
It should be a rude surprise for many people.
Or should be horrified.
But I think when it comes to super increases or changes like this, employers feel it immediately.
Do you think?
On the most part, I mean, I know a lot of people have inclusive type arrangements like that, but a lot of people don't.
Do you think employers should suck it up and just pay the extra super, or do you think they should be passing it to their employees?
So, despite that they might have a 100,000 inclusive of super type arrangement,
That's right.
Do you increase that total remuneration
to fit the extra 0.5%?
So that their take-home pay,
what's in their pocket every week is the same, as opposed to being lower.
No.
I'm trying to get down there.
No, I don't think so.
So
because
So you don't think employers should pay for that extra money?
Well, I mean you can if you want to.
Chris is of the view that employers shouldn't have to bear the cost of extra super. I think Chris is going to get 600,000 emails of hate mail from employees.
Probably. But I'll stand to be. I'm not going to shy away from a controversial opinion.
As an employer, I am thoroughly on board on that and think that's a brilliant idea, but I can understand if someone's living paycheck to paycheck, having less money in their pay might be really tricky.
Yeah, but I sort of think their anger is misplaced.
We're not talking about minimum wage employees because they get super on top.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. We're not actually monsters. We're talking about
underpayments.
Yeah, we're talking about people who are getting a salary that's far more than minimum wage,
such that they can
should be able
there's
to.
a deduction and it'll be fine.
Yeah, should be able to afford it, but it's happening.
It's happening,
well, we don't know if it's happening. We think it's happening.
We know the threshold being removed will definitely happen on the 1st of July, pending some.
Well, unless the government freezes it in the next
thing.
budget and they get in to freeze
True.
because it's going to be one of these things where one side will go yes and one side will say no, and
make it an election issue.
Everybody will vote for it. It'd be brilliant. Anyway, everyone out there who is watching and listening, thank you for sitting in for another Lawcast.
Yes.
I think I'm going to start making another Triple C. I'm going to find a Triple C.
Chris's Commission Crazies.
I do like that.
If you can come up with a better name. I mean, I did that on the fly pretty much.
I like it. If anybody out there has an alternative opinion, but I like it.
Yeah, and if you have anything you want us to cover for the Triple C, send that through.
True. If you've seen a case out there or been involved in something you want us to talk about.
We'll talk about all the different crazy cases that are out there.
Happy to relentlessly judge it, as we always do.
As we do, the commentators that we are. Do you think we're enough to call ourselves legal commentators?
No.
Legal and political commentators? Can I put that on my LinkedIn?
You can try.
I suppose I can put it there.
Put anything you like there.
Doesn't mean it's worth anything.
But Chris, does it make the boat go faster?
Well, I can just
Maybe
put it on my. You know when you
into
come into a news thing, you've got your little little thing at the bottom of your name. Just call
Chris
myself
D. Santana, legal commentator.
and legal commentator.
What does that even mean? People will be wondering.
Comment on the law. In many ways, we're all that.
Well, true. It's not like lawyers aren't opinionated enough.
No, that wouldn't be us.
Just broadcast it out there.
Anyway.
Thank you all for watching and listening. You have been listening to the Lawcast.
See ya.
Bye.